your seat, settle in, and listen up. Gophers 101 is underway and in session. It's time to go to class and talk all things Gophers.
Peach will get me every time. Every time that's going to get me, Thor. You know what? Happy to have Row the Boat, Sky Umai, Go Gophers on a victorious edition of Gophers 101. I guess we can still call this a victorious edition. Manny and I recap the win on Saturday. Maybe it was Sunday. I don't know. For many reasons I won't go into. All the days are bleeding together for me at this point. But very happy to see my guy, Mr. Thor Nystrom, as we talk a little Gophers football here on Gophers 101. And he just gave us a tip of the cap. It is a Thor's Day as we record this pod. Happy Thor's Day to those who celebrate, mainly you, Mr. Thor Nystrom, as we drop this pod on this Thursday morning.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Coming off a fun game. I was in the building to watch the Drake Lindsay National Coming Out Party on Saturday, and the revenge game that wasn't for Ethan Kaliak. Man, it started out well, and then Ethan kind of fell apart in the second half. But yeah, excited to get into it, and we had a sort of Star Was Born moment on Saturday with Drake Lindsay. So excited to talk about it.
Are we the unofficial, before we really get into it, is this the unofficial pregame show to Thor's Day and Purple Daily? Because this drops ahead of Purple Daily. I'm going to start dubbing it that. This is the unofficial pregame show to Purple Daily's Thor's Day. How do you feel about that, my man?
I'm good with that. As long as Phil's good with it, I'm good with it.
Phil will be good with it because I'm going to tell him he has to be good with it. How about that?
Love it. I love that.
All right, let's get into the game with you. Manny and I had a ton of fun breaking this one down. Manny coined it as a very entertaining but frustrating victory, which I guess I would agree with him on that. I think I said as much when Manny and I broke the game down. It was Saturday, now that I think about it. I think it starts with Drake Lindsay, and for the most part, it ends with Drake Lindsay. There's some other stuff that we will get into that I think is going to need to get cleaned up and be better if the Gophers have even a puncher's chance against Ohio State on Saturday. But man, when you complete 31 passes and you throw for over 300 yards and you throw 3 touchdown passes to 3 different receivers, and Thor, you let us all know about it. I think a lot of people who follow the Big Ten in college football know that Rutgers defense isn't super stout, but I said this with Manny when we talked about the victory almost immediately after it happened. Thor, it's one thing to say it's possible and believe that a quarterback should do it. It's another thing to go out and do it. And I now, having 3-4 days to think about this and going back and watching the full game highlights, like the BTN 60 type deal, I can't even come up with one pass that I would say that was a really bad pass. That could have easily been picked off. Again, I'm sure there were 1 or 2, but by and large, he looked like one calm, cool customer. And I'm not saying they will because he's still young, but if you're going to get that Drake Lindsay in a lot of these toss-up games, Thor, from here on out, the Gophers are going to be just fine. And you can say what you want about, the goal shouldn't be to go 6-6, 7-5 in a second or third tier bowl game. I get that, and we can have that conversation. But if you're just hopeful for a fun Gopher season from here on out, where the team looks competent and can show up and win most of the games they play in, that, at least from the quarterback, was an incredibly good sign this past Saturday at Huntington Bank Stadium.
Yeah, it was wild to watch a Minnesota Rutgers game where it looked like it was like an old school like Texas Tech against Oklahoma or something like that, or TCU with the offense of just putting the ball in the air the whole game, right? And some points of that game it was kind of defense optional. But yeah, it was crazy to see how many throws on both sides. I mean, Kaliak Manis had 34 attempts. You mentioned Lindsay at 31 completions on 41 attempts. So yeah, it was like these two teams come out kind of air raidy. And of course, with the Gophers, you lean that way because you were without Darius Taylor, and Rutgers' secondary has been so bad. And Drake Lindsay just goes and shreds them. And then on the Rutgers side, this is sort of what this team has become. It's not a typical Greg Schiano team. Their defense is terrible, but they have 3 NFL wide receivers starting on that team. And Ethan Kaliak-Manis has made an argument that he might be a draftable prospect as well. So that team, it's a throwing team. So it's pretty crazy. And Drake Lindsay, you sort of in this game, you had to get kind of into a firefight and come from behind after what happened in the first half. The Gophers were fortunate that when things were going bad in the first half, it didn't snowball worse. They got lucky a couple times with the points that were on the board there. And then they end up hanging around, and then Drake Lindsay helps them to roar back. But yeah, Lindsay was incredible in that game. This kid from Fayetteville, I saw some comms tossed out on Twitter to Ryan Mallett on the field. Ryan Mallett, of course, went to Arkansas back in the day. Big, strapping pocket passer with a big arm, can push the ball down the field easily. I don't know if that's the best one for Lindsay. Fortunately, we have quite a bit of time left until he ends up going to the NFL, where we can sort of settle on that one. But that kid is going to get drafted. I mean, that's what an NFL level thrower looks like. And what's interesting is right before the season, Quincy Avery, the one of the biggest named private quarterback tutors that we have, he went on Twitter and made this proclamation like, I guarantee that the Drake Lindsay going to be a first round pick at some point in the future. Like, people don't understand how good Drake Lindsay is. And it sort of raises your ears sort of perk up at something like that. And this game, Drake Lindsay showed the talent that he has as a thrower, that arm talent. Hats off to Drake Lindsay.
Thor, the big thing for me in that game, and you just kind of alluded to it, was the no panic factor. Okay, we have not played a good first quarter. Rutgers has had the ball for 80% of the first quarter. We trail 14-0, but you're able to get that first score, make it 14-7, and you go, okay, we're fine. We're going to need a stop or two. But this thing didn't get out of hand. One thing that also did help the Gophers was the blocked field goal, which kudos for blocking the field goal, but it looked like just a complete mishit. Looked like it came out way too low, but that's neither here nor there. Could have easily been 17-0 before the Gophers get on the board, and that really would have changed the game. Thor, you can argue it easily should have been 21-0 because on that first drive, Rutgers passed their way all the way down the field, then decided to run the ball, which that was basically the one point the entire game where Rutgers had trouble running the football. So things did break your way in that scenario, but to be able to not get overwhelmed by the moment, you were there. Thor, it was kind of a classic 11 a.m. crowd. Student section never got quite full, thinned out as the game went on, little bit sleepy of a crowd in its entirety, not full. You kind of got to create your own momentum, create your own vibe around the sideline. They did that when they got it to 14-7. Our guy, Kerry Brown, with a ball thrown right to him, which, by the way, hat tip to him. 20 yards on that return was all determination, just weaving in and out of people, refusing to get tackled. And then at the end, Thor just chooses, I can either maybe run out of bounds at the 9, or maybe I'm just going to try and power my way through 3 guys, which didn't work, but I love that. I'm going to take you all on and see if I can drag you to the end zone. I think that was what, to me, Thor, that's what's almost as big as putting up the numbers that he put up, was just okay, it's 14-0. This game still has 3 quarters to play, which is an eternity in college football. We're okay here, but it starts with 1 score. And they were able to do that, and the game turned around at that moment. And yes, the defense was able to make enough stops. But for me, what Drake Lindsay was able to do in that moment, just to get the team back on the scoreboard and back in the game, that was almost more important than any number or metric you can show me at the end of the game.
Yeah, 100%. That might be looked at as sort of like a crux point or a pivot point of the season when it's all said and done and you're looking back. Because being in the building, and Ross, I'm sure you're with me on this, you come off the loss to Cal, then they announced before the game something we expected, that Darius Taylor wasn't going to play, and then Rutgers jumped all over him coming out. And like you said, it was kind of sleepy in that stadium, and you're kind of looking around like, Are they going to get run out of the building by Ethan Kaliak-Manis here? And like, if you lose that game and now you're going to Ohio State demoralized and you're going to get decked there, like the season could have gone another way. And you don't win this game. You don't come back unless you had really, really good quarterback play. And so it was cool to see them sort of pivot the offense in the moment, but also not sort of go YOLO, like you get down early like that. And sometimes there's a propensity of like, let's erase the deficit with one throw and start throwing down the field. But they stayed within their passing offense more or less once they toggled the game plan, the game script in that direction. And Lindsey was surgical. They took the deep shots when it made sense based on the numbers, based on the situation, based on the look. And they were, of course, successful with that. That was a fun long touchdown to Smith. But, outside of that, just very, very surgical in a game where the defense, even though it's bad, the Rutgers defense knew, coming up, second quarter, but certainly second half, this is going to be throw. And Minnesota was still able to do that very effectively because of Drake Lindsey.
Yeah, and by and large, at least when it comes to the pass game, the offensive line held up. There were a few times where Rutgers got home and put a little bit of pressure on him, but to your point, Thor, any defense is going to be able to do that when you basically commit to we're going to pass 95% of the time. I said this over the weekend after the game. If you would have told me 2 years ago that at some point, I don't care who the Big Ten opponent is, a PJ Fleck team is going to win a Big Ten game by passing for over 300 yards and running for less than 40.
Yeah,
I would have said absolutely not possible. What world are we living in? I do want to bring up one thing before we go to a couple things that I think need to be addressed, which then will lead us into a bit of Ohio State preview. You'll probably have some numbers in front of you that can back up my eye test or lack thereof in this case. I thought we got the best game out of Koi Perich we've seen all year. Just passing the eye test, it seemed like he was where he was supposed to be. Had a nice sack on Kaliak Manis, which I continue to not understand how they didn't. How did they not review that for targeting? We review everything. We review everything for targeting, and to me, that kind of looked like it could have been based off of the low bar that we've set for targeting. But yeah, absolutely drilled him. Had the great kick return before half, which we can talk about that, but great kickoff return before half. Gophers had a chance to get 3. They didn't. He did have the one muff on the kickoff, but whatever. He got back on the ball. I think by and large, just the best effort out of him. And I guess to start to preview Ohio State a little bit, because he could have went there, I got a feeling we're going to get a really good effort out of Koi Perich this upcoming weekend against Ohio State. But did my eye test, do the metrics show that Koi had a good game?
100%. Yeah. And a huge bounce back, obviously, after the struggles against Cal and that young true freshman thrower that they have. Huge bounce back in a game where they needed them, right? I mean, the Gophers secondary had to step up. To come back, you had to have the good quarterback play, like I mentioned, but you also had to start showing some stuff on pass defense, particularly there in the second half. To slow down the Rutgers offense and allow your offense to come back. And secondary certainly did that. And Koi Perich, huge bounce back performance here. You mentioned the long kickoff return. He was doing stuff in coverage, flying down and smoking Kaliak Manis. And Russ, I don't know. I got to disagree with you on this. That looked clean to me, but it was a welcome back to Minneapolis 8th and moment kind of thing.
There was no flag and they did not review it. So it probably was clean. And I'm not saying that Koi is a dirty player. I think oftentimes we hit kids with targeting where there was zero intent for targeting. And I also think we've legislated targeting so much that I don't even think the officials have any idea what is targeting and what isn't, because it is not uniform game to game. So very happy to see that. One thing to note, maybe you saw something differently than I did. It definitely looked like they pulled the reins back a little bit. We've seen this throughout the year. He was not back there for every punt return. I think maybe they're picking and choosing when to have him back there, maybe based on how long the defense has been out on the field. That's just a guess. I don't know. Also, I don't know if he took a snap offensively. I should have reviewed that. Another failure on my part. Apologies. I will change my best and be better next time. But I'm not sure he took an offensive snap, which is something you and I talked about maybe coming.
Yeah.
So good. I would applaud that. And it's only one game, but I think you can logically deduce that he played better because of it.
100%. I also think there was a little bit more, if I may, continuity with the wide receiving core, with the pass catching core.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, you sort of got into a better rotation with that. Smith certainly looked more comfortable. Brockington was doing his thing. Like, it just seemed, I don't know. And you don't want to second guess it, because the offense needs playmakers, and I understand why they were trying to get Koi the offensive work, and it just didn't seem to be happening for them at the beginning of the season. And then you saw sort of the cluster mistakes crop up elsewhere in Koi's game. And we also can't say, just because of this one game sample, that categorically going forward, do not play Koi on offense. I wouldn't say that either, but I think it was nice to give him sort of like a get right game of like, just focus on defense. We need you. This team has 3 NFL receivers, Rutgers does, and a quarterback is looking like an NFL prospect. We're going to need you to win this game, and focus on defense, and then special teams, and maybe not quite as much as looks on special teams as you got in the past. I think that's fine as well. Right. Where the Gophers badly need Koi Perich is doing his thing as a center fielder and coming crashing down, challenging those catch points, trying to flip the field, and then occasionally send him on the pass rush. I think it was 2 times. I think they sent him on the pass rush, and out of those, he gets 1 sack. So you're sort of creating havoc there on defense wherever you go. But yeah, great bounce back performance by Koi.
Trio of compliments here, and I did this over the weekend as well. Ryan Burns does a great job covering the Gophers, as does Daniel House, Gophers Illustrated and Gophers Guru. And you as well, Thor, mentioned, I think in the preseason, or maybe it was just in passing, that Javon Tracy could do a lot for the Gophers. Transfer out of Miami of Ohio. Props to anybody who ate some NIL pizza or drank some NIL beer or just contributed to one of the NIL funds to very likely make that happen. He's been pretty solid. You can see that kid's a playmaker, and he's been pretty good, and you can see a nice rapport developing between Drake and not just him, but to your point, all of the receivers. Now, what does that look like this weekend at Ohio State? We'll get there again very quickly, but it's been fun to watch him develop as a Gopher here the first 4 games of the year.
Yeah, it sure has, and a valuable part of that receiving core, especially if Koi's not going to be eating into the playing time. You need all those guys. But yeah, Javon Tracy last year in the MAC, 57 catches, 818 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns for a team that wasn't great at throwing the ball at Miami of Ohio. This year, 12 catches, up to 204 yards and 2 touchdowns. Obviously got one this past weekend. But yeah, he's going to be instrumental for the offense moving forward, particularly like I wonder, and we don't know, when is Darius coming back? But like I made this point on Twitter at the end of the Rutgers game, until Darius comes back, this needs to be a pass first, maybe pass second kind of offense. PJ Fleck, his whole career, it's been about the run, setting up the pass, and then setting up the downtown, the one-on-one shots downtown. When you've established that run game, this has got to be flipped until Darius comes back. You now need your passing game to lead the foot of your offense, but you also need it to open up room for your running game. Right. I mean, so, can we flip sort of that philosophy? But yeah, the pass catchers come to the fore, assuming that that's what happens. And of course, this coming weekend, it's going to have to, because you're headed to Columbus, Ohio.
So let's make that shift that I've been teasing now for basically the entire pod towards Ohio State. 2 things the Gophers struggled with against Rutgers, which are a recipe for disaster when you're going to Columbus. They didn't run the ball very well. A part of it was, I think they just made a commitment to, we're not going to attempt to run the ball very much. But when they did, Thor, they physically could not do it. I think the entire first half, their longest rushes were 2-3 yard rushes until Ichaboy by himself got a 15, 16 yard gain in the second half, making guys miss and running people over. You're going to have some semblance of a running game against Ohio State, but far more terrifying to me, Thor, is that the Gophers could physically not stop the run on Saturday. And I said this with Manny, and I don't ever want to call a team soft. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm not saying that the players are soft or that they weren't giving a full effort, because I don't believe that. But I can tell you, and I believe you probably had a similar opinion to me, Thor, the defense just looks soft. Rutgers was 5 yards down the field every time before the Gophers could actually touch them and make an effort to bring down a running back more often than not. If they can't find a way to at least have a semblance of a running game and at least be able to have some semblance of stopping the run on Saturday night, it's going to get ugly, and it's going to get ugly in a hurry.
Yeah, I think a part of that defensive strategy is as far as you're toggling it to stop the pass more than the run. And obviously Rutgers was able to take advantage of that with that Raymond kid or whatever. I don't know how much of that is due to personnel, how much is that due to strategy. I think in this game coming up though, it's going to be similar. You have to stop Ohio State from throwing the ball. You have a generational talent in Jeremiah Smith on one boundary. You have a first round possibility on the other side in Carnell Tate. Carnell Tate's either going to go late first or early second in April. So you have the two amazing receivers, and then you have the young quarterback in Sayin. And Ohio State to this point, it's been interesting. And you see them against Washington in the last game, tough environment to play. Sayin was good in that game, but it was sort of like Aaron Rodgers against the Vikings over the weekend, where I believe Aaron Rodgers completed 2 passes beyond 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. It was just peppering the ball within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, just get it out immediately. That's what Ohio State was doing with Sayin. And some people think that's to protect the offensive line of Ohio State, get it out quick. Some people think it's to protect Julian Sayin, but that's what their strategy is. It's that quick hitting passing thing. And then Ohio State, they've now transitioned to a true freshman running back named Bo Jackson, which is awesome and hilarious. But Bo Jackson has overtaken the two veterans there. But yeah, like the Gophers do need to slow down that run. But the primary thing, they must slow down Ohio State's passing attack. And the fascinating thing, like you sort of get into the weeds with the matchup. The Gophers to this point, I believe they have a top 10 sack rate in the FBS. The pass rush has been really good to them. And obviously Agent Zero, our boy Anthony Smith, has been a big part of that. By the way, Anthony Smith, criminally under-discussed by people in my industry, NFL draft industry. I have not seen Anthony Smith in a top 50 board to this point. That changes later this week when my first top 50 board drops. Anthony Smith, if you're out there, you will be on that board. That kid's going to go. I think in round 2 is where I would project right now, but we'll see how he keeps playing. Is it 9 straight games with the TFL at this point? I mean, he has just been so disruptive. But the whole point being, you have that Gopher pass rush that has been so good, but now you're going up against this Ohio State passing attack where their whole prerogative is to get the ball out immediately. Can they neutralize the pass rush of the Gophers by doing that? And if so, then how do the Gophers hold up on the back end? And speaking of defensive strategy, what do you bake up for that, right? I mean, do the Gophers just decide in advance, let's drop 8, a whole bunch, right? Like let's flood it, let's flood the field and make the kids sort of pick apart, and just only paper cuts, but let's make it more difficult for them. Let's get more people in passing lanes and try to flip the field on them when they do this stuff. And let's get more aggressive on the back end. If you see it, you see the concept. We have the tape on this kid. It's the throwing really quick. Can we get any tells that allow a guy like Koi Perich sneaking up to jump one of them and to flip the field? You want to be viable in a game like this. God forbid an upset. And Roz, you were saying what ESPN said 5%, 6%. I think Bill
5.3 at the moment. 5.3.
5.3. Bill Connolly, SP Plus, he has it at a 10% win probability.
Hey,
but saying for Lloyd Christmas, so you're saying there's a chance, and for that 5.3 or that 10% chance to come through, you're going to need at least you're going to need good special teams play. And you're going to need at least one crazy defensive play, a flip the field, a pick 6, a scoop and score, something like that. And so that's interesting to think against that quick hitting Ohio State passing offense, which is going to attempt essentially to work around the Gophers pass rush. So that's something interesting here. And if you see that Anthony Smith, this game, his stats are lower than they've been in some of these. If I knew that in advance, almost assuredly it would be because of how quickly Ohio State's getting the ball up. But that's going to be a fascinating thing to watch.
Maybe an Andrew Van Ginkel like a pick 6 at the offensive line where it goes back the other way. Julian Sayin on the year, by the way, almost 1,000 yards passing. He's got 10 TDs, 3 interceptions. His QBR 82.2. So we'll see how that plays out throughout the game. Let's play this out a little bit because I did want to talk about this. If the Gophers were to pull an upset, and I don't believe that any game for the most part when you talk about power conference teams. Anybody can have an upset. A really good Ohio State team went and lost to a 3-win Purdue team about a decade ago at West Lafayette. Again, you're going back 25 years now at this point, but an average Gopher team went into an undefeated Penn State team at Happy Valley and knocked them off. There is a scenario in which the Gophers win this game. Yeah, I mean, if I had to guess, I would say Ohio State probably wins this game quite easily and comfortably. That doesn't mean you don't play the game. That doesn't mean you don't put your best foot forward. That doesn't mean you don't come up with a game plan that you believe is capable of winning the football game. And who knows? We'll find out as the evening goes on Saturday if the Gophers can hang in that game. Last year, I would have told you going to Michigan kind of felt like an unwinnable game, and the Gophers darn near could have won that game, probably should have, if the onside kick call was at least made correctly. Gophers would have at least tied that game, maybe won that game. So you truly never know. I'm trying to play out in my head how it happens, and I think you hit the nail on the head, and it's so cliche and it's so easy to say, but the Gophers have to win the turnover battle, and not only by win the turnover battle, you can't look back at the end of the day and say the Gophers didn't turn the ball over, but then you see, well, they went 3 and out 8 out of 11 times. So you can't win the turnover battle because you didn't sustain anything on offense. You're going to have to sustain some drives. And Thor, I think you might need to force 2 turnovers. Like maybe this is the day where Julian Sain just has his first really poor performance, and maybe a poor first half compounds into a poor second half. It has happened before to young quarterbacks. It will happen again. So I think the Gophers have to win the turnover battle. And I do think one thing that would help, Thor, whether it is 3 or 7, I think just getting on the board first and having a 3-0 or 7-0 lead, if the situation presents itself, could do wonders for the team. I think those are the 2 things that I will be looking for if the Gophers are to have any chance at winning on Saturday night at the number 1 team in the land.
I would agree with that. You know, if you're looking at like 3 keys of the game, I think starting fast would be one. Yeah, you can't get blown out. If you get blown out the field in the first quarter, like happened against Rutgers, you ain't coming back on this team, right? So you're going to have a hotter start against Ohio State than you did against Rutgers. Then on defense, I agree with you. It's causing 2 turnovers. I think you're going to have to get to 2 turnovers in this. So how do you do that, right? Disrupting that quick hitting passing game is a big thing. For me, I would have an unorthodox defensive strategy here. You know, I mean, like when people think about Ohio State and the 2 amazing boundary receivers, it's like, well, you got to go 2 high safeties the whole game so you protect the deep shots here. I wouldn't. In this game, it would be all single high safety, Koi Perich center field. And Koi Perich, we're putting this game in your hands. All the pressure is on you because it's going to be so high leverage. The decisions that you're going to have to make and then get involved with there, whether it's crashing down, trying the quick hitting passing game, you know, a lot of it's just going to be coming forward like that. I would try to flood that short intermediate sector there with bodies. So for me, it would be we would be conservative on the pass rush. I'm not going to be blitzing very much at all. They get the ball out too quick. It'd be a lot of dropping 7, a lot of dropping 8. Hopefully you can generate 2 turnovers. And then on offense for the Gophers, we assume Darius isn't playing again. Is that fair to say, Ross?
I would assume so. My hunch was if he didn't play at home against Rutgers, he wouldn't be unveiled against Ohio State. So I think your next best bet to see, and by the way, Turner didn't play either. I think your next best bet to see Darius Taylor would be homecoming against Purdue. And at this point, I'm kind of operating under the assumption, Thor, until you see him, it's not worth counting on him being there.
Yeah, 1,000%. And so let's just assume that he doesn't. Ohio State has an elite run defense. They're only mediocre to poor at one metric. If you get inside the advanced numbers on run defense, the only thing is their stuff rate. Ohio State is decidedly below average in the FBS, which means you can get the couple yards, the 3 yards, the 4 yards. That's what they will cede on the ground. So I'm going to use my running game in this one. If I'm the Gophers, just as the get me over chip towards the sticks, you're not getting anything explosive on them. It's not going to be anything crazy, but can we get the 3-4 yards every time we hand the ball off? That is something that Ohio State will give up. So you're chipping towards that. And then Lindsey and the receivers got to go off. I mean, you have to win this game through the air. The ground game, like I said, you can get some efficiency out of it. They'll have in their short yardage situations, the high leverage stuff. if they have a 4th and 1, if you're down there at the goal line, you have to convert those. But otherwise, this game is going to be won through the air. Lindsey can't. We just talked about the turnovers with Ohio State, and Russ, of course, the importance of winning the turnover battle. Get 2 or more turnovers. I mean, good luck. It's easier said than done, of course. But then you also need your offense, hopefully, to keep it to 0 turnovers, but 1 at the most. You turn the ball over more than that against a team like Ohio State. That's where the boulder starts rolling down the hill on you. So this game, it's all on Drake Lindsey on one side, and it's on Koi Perich on another side. And how those two guys end up playing is going to dictate a lot. How viable will the Gophers, how competitive will the Gophers be in this game?
Yeah, and great clarifier there, Thor. I did not mean just because the Gophers force 2 turnovers, they can give 2 away. This would be the game that I would be worried about Drake Lindsey making one of those not perfectly crisp passes to the boundary that ends up going the other way for a pick 6. Cannot have that. Also, I will point out,
gotta be careful.
Also will point out, Thor, a Philip Daniels. I did not think you were Phil Mackey. That's not where that came from. That's what you're going to think. A Philip Daniels revenge game. Of course, he was a Gopher, now starting on the Ohio State offensive line. Oh, good for him. So there's a fun little subplot for this upcoming weekend. Gophers and Ohio State. 6:30 again, ESPN says about a 5% chance the Gophers win the game. Who did you reference for 10%? Because that's what I'm going to go with. That's got me believing.
Bill Connolly. Bill
Connolly.
And he does ESPN too. I'm guessing yours was FPI. But, if we cut the middle, we'll say 7.5%, 8%.
Hey, let's go. Let's go.
Got to punch your chance.
Who knows? You never know. I do know you're going to give us a Thorfer right now, which is a gopher, to steal a term that the kids have used the last few years, which I still don't love, but I'm going to steal it. A gopher that has shown out in this last week in the NFL. Who do you got for our Thorfer, Gophers in the pros?
Well, we've been talking about the importance of Koi Perich and the importance of the Gopher pass defense and their secondary in this matchup against Ohio State. So let's just sort of stay with that vein. And let's toss out his precursor and someone that Koi Perich looks up to, Tyler Nubin, with the Giants. The Giants get their first win this past weekend. Is Jackson Dart's first start. They start their young quarterback there. But Tyler Nubin played really, really well in coverage in that game. And if he hadn't played as well as they'd done in coverage, you wouldn't have the whole thing. Oh, Jackson Dart wins his first start. Nubin had a good game there. John Michael Schmitz also starts on the other side for the Giants as well. So you had 2 Gophers in the starting lineup there. Giants, their fans are excited. They get a win, but I wanted to shout out Nubin for how well he did in coverage over the weekend in that win.
Whenever we go out, the people always shout, "There goes John Michael Schmitz."
Yeah. Amen.
Gotta hit you with this bad boy after a Thorfer. Let's take a look around the Big Ten and nationally in college football. The slate maybe not, not slight. The slate maybe not quite as plentiful on the surface as last week, but we still got some stuff to talk about, Thor.
Sure do. Yeah. For me, the one that I'm most excited for this weekend, and like you said, I mean, there is a step back because last week we had just an utterly epic college football slate, and it lived up to it.
We had Yahtzee. Last weekend.
It was a hell of a time. You go to the Gopher Rutgers game, which was super fun, right? And then came home, and then at night, it was all the way through till the end. You had those 2 awesome games going on at the same time. With Bama and Georgia and Oregon and Penn State. But yeah, this one on the surface, not as many like high profile matchups, but one that I can't wait to see is Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt traveling to Alabama. Vanderbilt 5-0 right now, number 16 team in the country. If they pull the stunner in Tuscaloosa, now people are going to start to say, could Vandy make the college football playoff? And of course,
and win the SEC. I mean, at that point, at that point, you got to start having the conversation.
They have looked really, really good. Now, in this game, of course, Alabama 10.5-point favorites, but we saw a worse Vanderbilt team beat them last year, right? I mean, now that was in Nashville, and that's when they pulled down the goalposts, and then people were carrying the goalposts down Broadway in Nashville after that game, is the wild upset. Vandy knows that they can do this now, but now you have to go into their home and also all-time revenge spot for Kalen DeBoer and Alabama. We've seen Alabama play up. We've seen Alabama play down this year. If the Alabama that played Florida State shows up, Vanderbilt's going to pull this upset. But if we get the Alabama that we have since, Ty Simpson, the quarterback for Alabama, looked fabulous against Georgia, and he's looked really good ever since the Florida State game, really. After the Florida State game, I'm like, are they going to bench Ty Simpson? The offense just wasn't moving, but it wasn't, it turns out the offensive problems in that game were not Ty Simpson's fault. Ty Simpson looks good. So that game probably right there at the top for me of games I'm looking forward to on Saturday.
Well, and Thor, some of this is for us as well, because we each and every week we love to dance on the grave of coaches who have lost their jobs or theorize people who might. We did caution at the beginning of the year. Yeah, Kalen DeBoer might be out at the end of the year. It's also entirely possible they rebound and go 10-2 and he's in the college football playoff or the SEC championship game. It appears that is where they're headed. I feel like this is a game that Alabama can maybe re-announce their presence back to the college football world, where maybe they win by 14 or 21. However, every time I think somebody's going to do that to Vanderbilt, it doesn't happen and Vanderbilt ends up winning the game. I will say this. I've said this to you in the past. I don't know if I've said this on the pod. I don't think I need any more playoff teams than 12. Maybe I would go to 16 and you just seed them 1 through 8 on each side. Okay, maybe I would do that, Thor. But I will say this, in defense of the system that I don't overly love, it has created a lot of excitement, and we're living in a world where you cannot sit here today. I think we know how this would play out, but we're living in a world as we sit here today on October 2nd. Indiana or Vanderbilt could win the national championship. Yeah. I don't believe that they're going to, but if they are in the college football playoff, you can't say they have no chance at doing it. That is great for the game. And again, to circle this back to the Gophers, if the college football playoff was in the mix in 2019, the Gophers would have been in the mix to be one of, and it was, but just not as a 12-team format. The Gophers would have been in the mix to be one of those 12 teams, and there's no telling that the Gophers can't be one of those teams next year, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. That is one of the beauties of the system. So that's why I do say these years where I don't think it's fair to say that the Gophers should win 10, 11 games, they're still very important to hopefully building towards that. So win 6, 7, 8 games this year. Be a team that goes into next year where people say, well, they got 9 or 10 games that they should win, and then there's a couple games that maybe they would lose, but be one of those teams that gets to 9, 10 wins and maybe gets into the conversation, and maybe a few things break right in the playoff schedule where you can win a game or two and have some fun with it. That is one of the brilliances to the system, where 5 years ago, the Gophers really had no chance to be in the college football playoff unless they got incredibly hot like TCU and stuff broke their way. Well, now you don't need to do that. Now you can maybe go 10-2 and be there. And I would say, yeah, it sounds preposterous and laughable to many. It's not out of the realm of possibility that can be the Gophers one day. So that is one of the brilliance and one of the beautiful parts to the college football playoff. And Thor, if they expand to 16 teams, I don't want to say that waters it down, but it makes it more obtainable for a team like Minnesota.
Yeah, 100%. And, you think about the team next year, the team this year, the Gophers, you're going to have to get to 7, 8 wins. I think when you start thinking about the transfer portal and the viability of keeping together the core nucleus that the Gophers have, and having success this year is a big part of that, of convincing a couple of the superstars that they have to stay on campus. And of course, you're going to need the financial backing. That Drake Lindsay, I'm pretty sure after the season, he's going to have plenty of suitors. He's going to have plenty of offers. I know that Koi Perich will. He certainly did last offseason. And you mentioned his recruiting process coming out of ESCO. Have to show have the success, but then you're also going to have the resources to keep those guys. But if you do, next year could set up pretty decent. I mean, you look at the non-con games, Eastern Illinois, home against Mississippi State. That is certainly winnable. And then Akron, right? I mean, you come out of your non-conference 3-0, 10-2 is good. Like what you said is true. You go 10-2 in the Big Ten or the SEC, modern day, you're getting into the playoff. So, I mean, you're going to need both Lindsay and Perich, and you're going to have to, build up the rest of the, Agent Zero is going to be gone. Anthony Smith, he's going to get picked in April, but you do have a lot of your core guys coming back theoretically that have extra eligibility. So, your point is well taken there. This season, I think getting to let's say 7-5 in the regular season, and you get a bowl win, or if you can go 8-4 and maybe get to 9 in the bowl, I think that's what you're kind of looking for, and then potentially building towards next year. That's where maybe you get your 2019 team. If they can keep everyone together, and if they make some smart signings in the portal themselves, PJ is showing to be decent in the portal so far. Not splashy, right? I mean, this isn't the New York Yankees. They can't go out and compete with Alabama or Georgia or Oregon or Penn State for some of these high-profile transfer portal guys. But you can, the level beneath that, if you scout really well, certainly you can run into contributors around your roster. So that's something to keep an eye on for next year.
Well, I'll make a comparison to Major League Baseball. When you look around the Major League Baseball playoffs as it's currently constructed, the Gophers, to me, would be more viewed like a team like the Cincinnati Reds, or even, yes, the Minnesota Twins. You have to scout well. Twins are not in the playoffs. That's not what I'm saying. You have to scout well, and you have to spend your money wisely. And when you do that, you need to be able to hit on those things. I want to close with this, and then we'll get you out of here. 30 seconds or less, and I'm not trying to will or put any bad vibes in the air that would come back to hurt the Gophers in about 7-8 weeks. Is Luke Fickell coaching the Badgers when the Badgers take on the University of Minnesota in about 7-8 weeks? And at what point is Luke Fickell coaching for his job? If Wisconsin only goes like 1-2 in the next 3 games, or has another bad loss upcoming at home, I can see how they pull the plug on this thing.
So just for folks out there, Wisconsin started out the season. They beat Miami of Ohio, beat Middle Tennessee. They're 2 G5. Barely. Yeah, the offense didn't look so good against Miami, Ohio in that opener. And then you get decked by Alabama. And then last week at home, bit of an embarrassment against Maryland, or that was before was that the bye week? That one is September 20th. But yeah, coming up at Michigan, Iowa, Ohio State, at Oregon, Washington, at Indiana, then Illinois, then at Minnesota. That is the gauntlet of gauntlets. To answer your question, no, Luke Fickell will not be coaching that game on November 29th at Minnesota. The guy that will be coaching that game for Wisconsin is Jeff Grimes, their offensive coordinator. They're gonna elevate him to interim for that one. The question isn't will Luke Fickell get fired. The question is when. That did not work, and I'm shocked.
Same.
Nobody hates Wisconsin more than me, and so no one is more sort of tickled about this thing going south than me. That was the all-time Grand Slam hire when they hired Luke Fickell. Notre Dame had interest in Luke Fickell in the past, a whole bunch of these big programs, and he waited around, and then just decided this one random offseason, okay, well, I'll go and be Wisconsin's head coach. And from the start, it didn't work out. He tried to make them an air raid with Phil Longo. Then he wasn't trusting Longo to do his offense, and he wanted Longo to run more. It's like, run the friggin' offense yourself then, pal. And, of course, then they had the divorce. I haven't heard great things behind closed doors at Wisconsin, and some of the way they run certain things, and navigating the NIL, which is a bit Wild West, which, a lot of times we think about from the player perspective. Coaches and the administration, stuff like that, they have their part in that too. I have not heard the best things about Wisconsin, but here's a great example, Ross. Wisconsin went out, they haven't done great in the transfer portal. They went out and they got one of my favorite dudes in the transfer portal this past offseason. And it kind of opened my eyes. Oh man, they're going to get one. Tanner Koziel, a tight end from the MAC, who was just dominant the year before, and who I ranked second in my 2026 tight end rankings, for the draft eligible guys. He goes through the spring there, and I don't know what happened. If it was related to anything I've heard about behind closed doors there at Wisconsin with some of this different stuff. Koziel then transferred after spring practice, goes down to Houston, and he's by far their leading receiver. They throw the ball to Koziel every single time. So you have all these systemic problems at Wisconsin. Even if they identify a guy and convince him to come in, they're having issues keeping him. You have problems, continuity with the schemes. You have infighting there, all kinds of stuff. The Wisconsin program will get a shot again to be competitive once Luke Fickell is gone. I can't believe that I'm saying that. It is not going to work with Luke Fickell there. I think they already know that. Luke Fickell is walking the green mile now. He will be fired at some point in October or early November. We will not see him in Minneapolis.
Well, I was convinced that Jim Leonard would have been a good football coach there, maybe too similar to Paul Chryst along the lines of, oh, they're just going to go 9-3 every year. Oh, must be rough. So they decide they need to aim higher and they go with Luke Fickell. And at that moment, Thor, I'm with you. I said, oh, believe. Like, yeah. I think he's a dang good coach, but for many reasons, it hasn't worked there. And thank goodness.
Row the boat, Scotty, go Gophers.
And hopefully the Gophers get a chance to, they'll have a chance, but hopefully they finish the job and they're able to win the axe again one more time later on this year. Thor, we have finished the job for this edition of Gophers 101. Happy Thor's Day. This has been the unofficial Thor's Day pregame show for Purple Daily. It's Gophers 101. That's Thor Nystrom. I'm Ross Brendel, back again with Thor next week.